Good morning, Dom.
Good morning, Kat. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing fantastically. I like that we're changing scenery per episode, which I think is
I know.
fun. It
We're
moved
working it
also.
out. We're experimenting, figuring out what our setups are going to be. And currently, I'm in a blanket fort, and I'm very much enjoying the experience.
It looks great. It looks great.
Uh,
At what age did we stop making blanket forts just for fun? That was a silly thing. When they say growing up's a trap, this is exactly what they're talking
mhm.
about. Like, when did we stop just being like, I'm going to take 18 pillows there, I'm going to make myself a little hidey hide, and I'm going to watch some movies in there, and that's going to be my day.
I mean, I've never stopped making blanket forts, so maybe I've just never grown up.
I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you.
Thank
That was the
you.
correct choice.
I want that
So
as a voice note.
that I'm
I'm
proud
proud
of
of
you.
you, Dom Sherwood. Yes.
Yeah.
Um.
So
Yes.
before we dive into anything, I am Dominic Sherwood.
And I'm Catherine McNamara, and welcome back. Come join us as we return
Return
into
to
the
the shadows.
shadows. We'll
We're
get
gonna
that
get it. One
eventually.
of these episodes, we're gonna get it perfect.
I think we'll probably need to be in the same spot because
That makes
internet
sense.
lag is real.
Yeah. Uh huh. Uh huh. So where we left off last week, we had left poor Simon upside down. Um,
Poor Simon.
and we were all in sort of a bit of a panic as to how to get our brave, wholesome, handsome Mundy back, although Jace would never admit any of those things.
Never.
Um, and we're sort of at a loss of what to do next. And that leads us
Hmm.
directly into episode 3, which is what we will be talking about today, called Dead Man's Party, the air date of which was January 26th, 2016. 2016. Good
I
grief.
know.
Wow.
Long time ago.
Over 6 years ago. Unbelievable. Which was written based on the books by Cassie Clare, with the writers of the episode being Ed Decter and Marjorie David. And it was directed by the lovely Andy Wolk. And it was the first time we got to meet him, which was fantastic. Um,
Andy. What a sweetheart.
Andy. Um, Kat, tell us a little about what we can expect in this episode.
So, in this episode, the group takes an unexpected detour into the realm of the undead. Clary, Jace, Alec, and Isabel must hatch a rescue plan that takes them into the heart of a vampire lair. With Simon being held captive at the Hotel de Mort, Clary pleads with Jace, Alec, and Isabel to help her rescue her best friend. As the team readies for the mission, Jace helps Clary learn more about her Shadowhunter powers, Isabel turns to her favorite Seelie for intel, and Alec begins to question Jace's motives and his place in their partnership. Meanwhile, a very scared Simon gets very up close and personal with Camille, the leader of the vampire clan. So much happening in already episode 3.
So much. So much already going on. We're meeting new people. We're meeting new species in our world.
And a
Although I
lot
think we
happened behind the
briefly
scenes of
met.
this episode as well.
We'll get into that later. I was rewatching it 2 days ago.
Yeah.
I was dealing with jet lag from England to LA, and I was rewatching it, and I got like full body shivers because you can see when it happened, or you won't see as an audience member ever when it
Yeah.
happens, but I can see when it happens, and I'm like, oh, yep, that's it, that's the moment right there. But we will get into that later on. Um, so diving right into this, Kat, why don't you tell us some of the fun facts about shooting this? Except for fun fact number 2, I will tell everyone
Yeah, we're
about
not
that
going to talk
later.
about fun fact number 2. So we shot this episode in 10 days, from the 19th of June to the 29th of June, 2015. Oh, June. Oh boy, it was starting to get warm in Toronto.
It was starting to
Um,
get warm.
and
It was,
let's
and this
see.
was pre temperature control in our studio as well, was
Yeah.
it not?
Yeah, we'll
Because
get
I
into
feel like
that
I
more in
remember,
episode 5.
yeah, episode 5, it was bad. That's I remember there
Episode
was.
5 is when it got real bad, but
Hmm.
we'll discuss that. There's a particular scene between myself and Matt Daddario that really caused a turning point in the
Yeah,
Shadowhunters lore and what
yeah,
we perceived for.
canon can't do.
Yeah. Anyway, and led to some set changes in season 2, but we'll sort that out later.
Hmm. Hmm.
There's a few goofs in this episode. We were still learning how to do all the vampire freezing and incantos and speed and such. And so there's a point, I guess, in which Simon's hand changes position. And there's another point
Interesting.
Um, where we've got some jumping Bloody Mary glasses. I don't know. I've never caught those things, and I've seen the episode a few
Here's
times.
one of the best things about being on like a supernatural-esque show, though. Like
Yeah.
anytime someone points something like that out, we can just be like, "A warlock did it. It was a warlock. It's
Yeah,
magic. It's
because
magic.
magic
Magic
is the
happens.
best
It exists in
excuse.
our world. It
Yeah,
so just don't mess around with it. Like
yeah,
this is our excuse, and that's you're gonna have to be happy with that, and that's where we live."
yes. Another fun
Um,
fact, this is the
Go
first
ahead.
episode that we really get to talk about Parabatai, and we really get
Mm,
to dive into that mythology and what that means, and we get into it more in episode 4, but and I know that was something that you and Matt dealt with the most because you really are
hmm
the only kind of major Parabatai that we really dive into. We get into it a little bit with Luke later on, but it's more
hmm
so you and Matt kind of carried that mantle, as it were, throughout the whole
Yeah,
series.
and that yeah, we do get into that in season one, don't we, with Luke and his Parabatai? But yeah, of the and then in towards the end of season three, we have some more that come into it. But yeah, it really is just Matt and I, which was really good fun for us. You know, we got
Mhm.
to like we've discussed a few times before in this podcast, with Simon sort of taking, or Simon and David taking the hands of like, this is what the vampires are going to be. This is how they're going to move. This is how they're going to look. Like, this is our responsibility to develop this. Matt and I had the responsibility of developing what the Parabatai relationship was.
Yeah.
Even again, one of those things to coming down to like how you say Parabatai, and Matt and I both pronounced it Parabatai sort of almost instinctively. But we actually had that conversation with Cassie, and when Cassie wrote it, I think she had it in her head as Parabatai. I think that's how
Okay.
she had it pronounced in her head. And it's just interesting that Matt and I got to a different pronunciation. But yeah, this was sort of the first time where we get to like anticipate and sort of foreshadow what this relationship is going to be and how important it is and explain it to the audience. And then what I did notice, which I think is interesting, which I don't think we'd really touched on, I don't think we touch on in this episode, and correct me if I'm wrong, but we do see the first sort of opportunity of Alec feeling what Jace is feeling. And it happens later on, and when we get to that section, I'll sort of explain it. But you do see a moment where, and it's quite cool. I wonder if it was just by accident because I don't remember having this conversation. But there's Matt in the foreground and me in the background, out of focus here, and we both sort of do the same thing with our faces, just for a half a second, and it's a cool moment for us because that becomes so like intransiently important.
Yeah.
Intransiently, is that the correct word? I honestly, I'm not sure what that word means. I don't know where that came from. It becomes
Sure.
important later on
Yeah.
in the show. So this was, yeah, it was a fun opportunity for us to sort of explore and play with that relationship.
And that's what's so great about this is there's so much mythology to the show and so much of it. I think why all of us had so much fun, especially in this first season, is we got to kind of create the rules for the
Hmm
mythology and how, we read the books and you know what it's supposed to be and it's scripted and all of this. But then the physical kind of manifestation of it when you're living it out, it becomes different and it's a fun thing to get to create with a group.
Totally, totally. And I think another fun point for audiences who don't know necessarily, or maybe who are unfamiliar with what sort of set life is like, you can have the best laid plans of mice and men ready to rock and roll, and then you get to set that day and there's a tree that nobody noticed, or their ground is too hard, or something is different and we weren't expecting that, and all of a sudden we have to change the scene kind of on its head, and we're like, okay, well, instead of you saying this is being said by this person, we're going to do this and we're going to do this, and we're just going to
Yeah.
switch it because
Yeah.
we, especially with a show like Shadowhunters where we sort of 50-50, we were in the studio, 50-50 we were out on location. When you're on location, you don't have that much control. You have some control, but you don't have that much control of what's going on. Some days you turn up and they have decided to fix the road across the street, and that's the noise that you're going to be hearing the whole way through. You just have to sort of roll with it. um, and we did a lot of this episode, I think, was very 50-50 on location,
Mhm.
and it was our first big nighttime shoot, like first proper 2 a.m. shoot, I think.
I mean, since we had done, all the stuff in the nightclub,
Hmm.
it was one of our first shoots that we were up all night outside in a
See,
graveyard that we
outside, I
all
think
got
that's what I
very
mean because
familiar
the
with. Yeah.
we got very familiar with this graveyard. I think
We
outside is more what I mean because you can,
yeah.
when you're inside and you're shooting till 2 in the morning, you don't really have any reflection of that time passing because you're
Mhm.
stuck inside. You're just
Yeah.
working inside. When you're outside, it starts to get colder and the bugs start to come out and they want to bite, and the mood just shifts at one point because it's cold and it's dark and we're filming in a graveyard and it's weird.
I
Um,
think wasn't this also the episode that we all spent so much time in the panda van and got the
Trying to
fumes
keep
started to
warm.
get to
The
us?
fumes, that's
Do you
right.
remember
That is so I
this?
do remember that. So the Panda Van, as cool as it was to see on screen, it had some leaks. Boy had some leaks.
Yeah.
It's not a big
Yeah.
deal, but it smelled like gas. It smelled straight up like petrol in that
Yeah.
car. And
Yeah.
if you sat in it for too long, you started to get a little loopy. And
We got the
that was
giggles.
yeah, we got the giggles, which we were
Yeah.
all, accidentally high, which is not ideal. But yes, I do believe this was one of the episodes. Kat, again, this being your foray, why don't you tell us a little about some of the important book to screen moments?
Yeah, so as we dive in, there's only a few differences. As we, have discussed, we get to talk about Parabatai this episode, which is fantastic. Also, one of our biggest locations and something that really comes in the book is the Hotel de Mort, which it tends to
Hmm.
be the central vampire lair in New York City, which is an old hotel that's under construction, and it's not only is it a vampire lair, but we discover that the vampires are hedonists, but also have a proclivity for stealing ancient artifacts and artwork
Is it
and
stealing?
other
Is it
valuable.
stealing though?
Well,
Like if
stealing,
you rob your own grave,
collecting,
this is a whole thing,
attributing,
right? Like also, yeah, I mean,
gathering,
the one
acquiring.
thing, yeah, one of the sort of the inevitables of eternal life is you are going to hoard. And I think it's whether you hoard something that's valuable or whether you hoard something that's not valuable. And they do tend to, I think in most iterations of the vampire story, there are these sort of archaic antiques that live within their world because either, even in Bram Stoker's, and this is another thing that's very cool is especially with things like vampires, is we get to take on like the last possible version of a story that's existed for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, and we try and stick to some of that lore, or we poke fun at previous lore, or we create our new lore, or whatever it is. But as a general rule, the story sort of stays the same. So Bram Stoker's Dracula lived in this gorgeous castle in Transylvania, but had collected all of these sort of accoutrements over the course of the hundreds and hundreds of years that he's been alive, and we still have that lore in our show.
Yeah.
Those vampires still do that same thing, which I think is, for me, that was something that was really cool about working on a show like this. Is it is modern, and we've got new tech, and we've got these swords and jackets, and all of this new stuff, but also we do talk about this a lot, it's a war that's been being fought since, we have a date for it. What is it? Looking better in black. It's better in black than the
Against our
widows of our
enemies.
enemies since
I think it's
1810,
I think it's 1234.
1234. I was off by quite a way, by about 600 years.
That's okay. But I want to say it's 1234, but I could be very wrong.
1234 should have been an easy one to remember as well. 1234. It's 1234 is what it is. That's an easy date. Do you want to try and connect your headphones, sweets? Now, you sure? All right. Decca's over there.
Aw. Also, we get to see a little bit more about Clary and Simon's relationship. And,
Hmm.
uh, Clary's losing all of her people. And she's lost Simon. She has lost her mom at this point, and in essence, she's lost Luke.
Hmm.
And we start to learn about some of the Clave rules as they, figure out how to get Simon back. And I feel as though we always had this discussion of how this particular Shadowhunter team of Izzy, Jason, Simon, or not Izzy, Jason, Simon, Izzy, Jason, Alec, probably tend to be the more rambunctious of the
Yeah.
Shadowhunters, because all the rest of the
Yeah.
Shadowhunters tend to seem to really follow the rules and do their job and clean up our mess that we create every episode.